With the ever-changing and always advancing consumer tech industry and the seeming attractiveness of having the latest and greatest gadget, we often lose track of the things we already have. Older electronics that can be repurposed and given new life. Finding ways to revitalize these devices and keeping them from ending up in the landfill is an extremely rewarding proposition. With so many creative and intelligent people out there, it's never been easier to figure out what to do with our old tech. And sometimes they can lead to some surprising outcomes. Hey everyone, how's it going? My name is Tito and welcome to another episode of Retro Renew. Today we'll be doing something a little different. We're going to be taking a look at this. Now, some of you may probably be asking, Tito, why are we looking at an old iPod? Isn't this a retro gaming channel? Well, I'm sure after seeing the thumbnail and the title, you probably know what we'll be doing. We're going to be putting a GameBoy Color inside this iPod. Well, not exactly. One afternoon, while scrolling through Reddit, I came across this post from Isaac, also known by his username HumanReading3623. It showed a photo of Pokemon Crystal running on an iPod Classic. I reached out to him and asked if I could do a video on this mod. He agreed and even let me borrow his modded iPod so I could show all of you. So shout out to Isaac for letting me borrow his iPod Classic. So if you're like me, I'm sure some of you perhaps have one of these lying around somewhere. It's probably sitting in a drawer, not really doing much, except collecting dust. So let's see if we can change that. Thankfully, there's a huge diverse community out there of people who have found ways of repurposing old, outdated electronics, and our friend the iPod is no exception. While this iPod may look normal, it actually had its software modified with an open source operating system called Rockbox. Rockbox is an alternative OS that provides a plug-in architecture which allows users to install new capabilities that these devices were otherwise not designed for. Additionally, you can boot into the original OS as well, so you don't lose the original functionality. Rockbox is available on a whole lot of different digital audio players, not just the iPod. If you go to the website, you can see all the devices that Rockbox is compatible with. Now in this video, I won't be going over the installation process, but it appears to be pretty easy based on the research I've done on this software. If a tutorial is something you all would be interested in, let me know in the comments section below. Alright, so what I am going to do is I'm going to discuss the key features and operation of the GameBoy Color emulator for Rockbox. Then I'm going to show you some gameplay footage so you can get a sense of how it performs, go over the pros and cons, and end things by providing you with my overall thoughts. Alright, as you can see, when we turn on the iPod, it launches the original operating system. To get into Rockbox, simply press and hold the menu and center button until the screen turns blank. Okay, so now we're in the Rockbox OS, which as you can see looks very similar to Apple's. From here, you can do many things, but we are primarily concerned with playing Game Boy Color games. So to do that, simply select Files, which is the first item on the list. Then scroll down to GBC Games. Here you'll find a list of your ROMs. It's actually really simple to add more games. You simply plug your iPod into the computer and drop them into the appropriate folder. No need for any specialized software. Okay, let's load up Pokemon Crystal. Scroll down and press the center button. With the game loaded, let's go over the button layout. The scroll wheel is split into 8 sections. Menu, Play Pause, Track Previous, and Track Next represent up, down, left, and right on the D-pad. Now, the spaces in between are your A, B, and Start Select buttons, which can be kinda tricky to press. So let me demonstrate this by playing some Pokemon Crystal. Now to exit the GameBoy Color emulator, simply slide the whole toggle to the right and then to the left. Once out of the emulator, you are presented with some options such as save states, which is very useful and I'm glad that they included. And there's even various scaling options that you can select, although I prefer the scaled image which takes up the entire screen. There's also a 1:1 integer scaling, but it's a very small image. To exit the application, simply select Quit. To exit Rockbox and go back to the iPod, press and hold the menu and center button. When the screen shuts off, immediately let go and slide the hold switch to the right. It is a little bit tricky to get the hang of this, but once you do it, it's easy to do again. Now, we just scratched the surface of the Rockbox OS capabilities. Here is a manual for the 6th generation iPod version of the software, which goes over all the features and applications, and as you can see, it's over 250 pages. So there's bound to be something interesting for everyone here, and this just speaks to the capabilities this operating system adds to these old music players. Now, before we move on, let me show you some more footage of some of the other games that this thing can play. Now, this is Quake. This runs exceptionally well and is absolutely impressive that this iPod is capable of playing it. Honestly, I feel like it runs smoother than the Game Boy Color emulator, which to me means that the emulator can still be further optimized to run better. Again, I can't even tell you how impressive this looks. You can even play Doom and Wolfenstein 3D on this device as well. Alright, so now that we got a feeling for how everything works on the iPod, let's go over the pros and cons. Starting with the pros, I think this is just the coolest thing ever. I mean, we're able to play Game Boy Color games on an old iPod. It's really a unique thing, and I have to say, after not holding an iPod for a while, these things are truly sleek devices. Love or hate Apple, I really think they have an incredible design aesthetic, and the feel of the device is awesome. Now, beyond the emulation, the Rockbox software really brings an amazing amount of new capability that never existed on the iPod. There's just really too many features to list, but the gaming possibilities alone are quite impressive. The fact that classics like Quake and Doom run on this is truly remarkable. Rockbox is available for many devices, so definitely check out their website to see if your digital audio player is supported. And now let's get into the cons, and unfortunately there are quite a few. At the end of the day, this is certainly somewhat of a novelty. I don't expect anyone to really game seriously on these types of devices. I see this more as a talking piece and something that you can perhaps impress your friends with. Now, don't get me wrong, I still think one can reasonably play RPGs like Pokemon without many issues. Also, the first-person shooters seem to be more optimized for gameplay and are actually quite fun. Now, this brings me to the controls. The iPod was obviously not meant to be a gaming platform, and it really shows. The Game Boy Color emulator is not great for the more action-oriented platformers like Mario, which rely heavily on timing of button presses. But like I said, RPGs such as the Pokemon series, where timing of the button presses aren't exactly that important, and that exhibit overall slower pace of play, this actually can work quite well. Another con is frame rate. It is noticeably choppier than playing on original hardware. Here is the iPod side by side with an IPS modded Game Boy Color. You can see how much smoother the original Game Boy is. This really doesn't affect gameplay too much, but it's definitely a shortcoming. Now, the audio is an entirely different story. Well, instead of me telling you about it, why don't I show you? Yeah, it's pretty bad. And on top of that, I couldn't easily find a way to control the volume, not that it matters since it's quite unlistenable. I think it's best to play without any audio, which I think is totally fine, especially if you're just intending to play this on the go and to just kill some time. I'm hoping that some of these issues can get optimized over time for this particular hardware set, but again, the controls aren't the best, and there's really no way to improve that on an iPod. So there you have it. Playing Game Boy Color games on an iPod Classic. While not the most practical, it can certainly be an alternative for playing slower paced RPGs and some of the more optimized first-person shooters. And on top of that, it's of course a stellar MP3 player. I want to again thank Isaac for letting me borrow his modded iPod for this episode. As always, I'm curious about what you all think of this mod, so definitely leave me a comment with your thoughts down below. I hope you did enjoy this video. If you did, please give it a like and consider subscribing to the channel. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram at Macho Nacho Productions. I release content every Thursday, so be sure to turn on notifications. And as always, see you next time.